Hey, welcome to the Northeast Hunt and Film podcast. I'm your host, Jason Alex. Here you'll find hunting stories and strategies based mainly out of the Northeast, but will also include hunts from all around the country. If you can hunt it and you can film it, chances are we're going to talk about it on here. Enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Northeast Hunt and Film. On this week's episode, I'm joined again with Jeremy Ballantyne. We're talking turkeys, we're talking shed hunting, we're talking hunting big woods bucks, stands to set up, things to watch out for, wind and thermals, all kinds of good stuff. So turkey season's open now. Went down to Mass on Saturday, and it was kind of a last minute decision to turkey hunt Mass. I didn't plan on it. And then New Hampshire didn't open until Sunday, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, I still got to apply for my doe tag, and you got to buy the hunting license to do so. So might as well spend another $10 and get turkey tag and go Saturday. So we went down there, and I knew where some birds might be just based on where I deer hunt. I'd seen scratching and stuff around, and it looks like good turkey habitat. So we went there, got out of the car, and sure enough, heard a gobble. I think it was a Tom and two Jakes. So we worked up the hill and got level with them. I called a little bit, just real light, and we heard putting from a hen. We thought we were busted, so we kind of just backed out real slow and circled up further up the ridge. And I called again, and she started calling back, cutting back, and I cut back to her and arguing with her there on the ridge, trying to pull her up to get that longbeard in with her, but she took him away, and we thought crossed the road, so we circled around, went across the road, couldn't strike him up, couldn't find him. I got looking at the map, and there was a field in somebody's yard that was just down below where they roosted. So we're guessing they went to there. So we went around, tried to find some other birds, and no luck. Saturday, New Hampshire opener was crazy. We had birds gobbling everywhere. We were working towards some birds and heard a shot. Somebody slipped up underneath us, a little ways off, but in the interim, I had called this bird. Well, we got up to the top of this ridge, and you could just see a bunch of ridges around, so I got on the call pretty aggressively, and heard gobble way off. I mean, a quarter mile away, way off, and, real faint. We're kind of just like, oh, well, if this doesn't work out, we'll go after him. Went after those birds, heard the shot, said, okay, we'll go after that one. So we're heading down off the mountain, and, we're hoofing it. We're trying to get to him, to the ridge where he was. Luckily, we were out of sight, but he gobbles, like, right there. We both look at each other like, oh, crap, what do we do? Luckily, there was some cover behind us, and it was really open, and I thought he wouldn't commit without the decoy, so I got the decoy out of my pack, and I put it up, and we tucked back behind this, or she was in front of I think it was an ash tree, but there was low hemlock boughs near us, so it was kind of a little ground blind-esque setup, and I was over her shoulder with the camera. He popped his head up, and I could see him, because I was about a foot above her head. I could see, like, from his waddle up, so if I had a gun beat on him, I could have killed him, but she could only see, like, from his eyeball up, from the little knoll, and he saw that decoy, and he strutted down there. I mean, there's a lot of things I would have done differently in hindsight, but crawling up there would have been an option, but we thought he'd just circle around, or I thought he'd just circle around and maybe come in at a different angle, so I was getting her to swing left while I was scratching at the leaves. and he's gobbling, 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 just insane. So he ended up working off. He didn't like something, probably the fact that my Walmart decoy wasn't moving. But he went the other way. We circled around to try to get in front of him, but he ended up crossing back across the road and going back where he came from. Then we heard another bird way off and went to try to go work him. Don't really know what happened with that one. He must have drifted off. Maybe he had a hen with him. I don't know. But today, Monday, the 2nd, before work, I went out, and first spot I went to, no birds. Second spot I went to, I was like, well, I got to just go for a hike, I guess, because I can't just keep driving around to getting further away from work. I got to be in for 6:30, 7 o'clock. Getting my stuff on, I hear a distant gobble, and I'm hoofing it because they're going to hit the ground here in 10, 15 minutes. I'm hoofing it up the power line, going, and I don't know how he didn't see me, but I heard a gobble like right in front of me, just off the power line. I kind of just stopped in my tracks and crouched down. I got my binoculars up to try to see if I could see him in the tree, but I couldn't, so he maybe just out of sight, but real close. I'd say 70 yards probably, less than 100 for sure. So I backed up real slow. I didn't turn around. I just backed up, so I less movement. So I slipped back down the power line, tucked in the woods. Got looking around like, okay, I can call now if he's gonna come, I can set up. So I gave him a few light yelps. He responded right away. I got a little more aggressive with the yelps, and he cut me off. He's still in the tree at this point. So I was like, okay, he's definitely interested. So I set up. I gave it another 5 minutes or so, and I didn't call. I started scratching at the leaves, and he gobbled to it. So I started yelping. He gobbled to it, and then I started yelping, cutting and yelping, just, and then I just shut it down. Waited a little while, and then he gobbled. I could tell he was on the ground. He probably landed in that power line right about where I was standing. I could hear hens, one hen up the hill, one hen down the hill. They weren't with him, but they were vocal. They were around. And I guess he just decided I was the closest one, or I was the most excited or something. But he came in the wood line, and he was 10 yards behind a pine tree gobbling, and I didn't know which side of the pine tree he's going to come out on. And I'm falling apart, shaking, like, my eyes are darting left and right, each side of the tree, like, where's he going to come? And then he pops out, and I smoked him. So he was 18 pounds, 7/8 spurs, and he had beard rot. The longest strand was like 5 3/4 inch. I could just tell by his gobble he was a tom. So good morning. Yeah, I'll be back. I'll probably go right back there tomorrow morning because there was 2 or 3 other birds around the area gobbling. So I didn't blow it up too bad. I skirted out of there clean. Birds are fired up. I can't remember a spring where it opened up and they were just like so willing to come into a call. Like, I actually was talking to Jeremy earlier, and he thinks, because Jeremy's killed over 100 turkeys just with a bow, and then however many he's killed, 150 turkeys. So I figured he'd be the person to ask, and he thinks, and it makes sense, that since the snow got out so early, a lot of the breeding got done early, and the hens are kind of nesting right now. And there seems to be a lot more males. Seems to be a lot more toms this year than I can remember. I'm actually seeing a lot more toms than jakes. Usually it's the other way around. But yeah, I've been seeing lone hens for weeks now, just by themselves in a field, So, makes sense. I didn't really get any footage of I had my GoPro mounted on the gun, but I didn't have it tight enough, and when I shot, it kind of not fell off, but it's just not good footage. It was really early. I shot him at 5:30, and it's just dark, and yeah. That before work stuff is just kind of like, go, 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 go. I don't tend to try to mess with a camera, but yeah. So I'm sure there'll be something on film this year. I'll quit my rambling here, and we'll get in this podcast with Jeremy. Enjoy. All right, we're live. Another episode of Northeast Hunting Film. Sitting for the fourth time?
Yeah, it's been a few now.
Yeah.
Gonna start to lose count.
Yep. Jeremy Ballantyne. We're gonna talk some deer antlers and turkey and spring stuff.
Yeah.
Probably some deer.
Yeah.
Elk.
Just about my favorite time of the year is all the spring scouting and turkey hunting starting. It's awesome time.
Yep. You've been putting the miles on.
Yeah.
Picking up some bone.
Yeah, I've I don't know, I was around 120 miles in March, somewhere around there. But I had a lot of free time in March, and work is starting to ramp up right now, so I was just trying to take advantage of it all in March. And we had good weather. You know, you can read the woods really good right now. So I got some stands moved, made some mock scrapes, got some cameras out even early that I won't even look at until November. But it's pretty cool to have cameras out there working anyways. They're not doing anything in the backseat of my truck. So
Yeah, exactly.
might as well. They still had 80% battery life from last year, so I put a new card in them, put them out. I've got a lot of deer figured out, I'm hoping, from last year. I've got a lot of antlers from target deer that were good 3-4-year-olds last year. I'm curious to see what they do for a jump this year. I mean, I got pictures of them and saw them in the fall and then know where they wintered. So a lot of pieces of the puzzle put together. Hopefully, I'm curious to see what they do. It was a light winter, so hopefully they put on some inches of antler.
Yeah, they won't have that stress.
Yeah, no, they were still eating acorns in March as the snow was melting. So
Yep.
Even though the oaks were really spotty, they still had good. I'd only found one dead deer all winter, and I think that one was killed by bobcat. Natural predation. So
Smaller one.
yeah.
Yep.
So deer did good. And now we're getting into the turkeys, and the turkeys are back in the ridges too. They're eating beech nuts and in the maple lots as normal. But
yeah, I noticed the flocks are breaking up, and you're starting to see like lone birds and stuff. I saw a lone longbeard last night, just all by himself in the middle of a field.
Absolutely, that's what I like to see.
Yeah.
Hopefully they got you want most of that breeding done in April. So
yeah,
it's when they're still in winter groups. And it gets into May. That's tough when they got all those hens running around. So it would be nice if this year a lot of those hens were nesting by the time the season started.
I saw one on the side of 91 that she's all by herself, and there's that game fence they got.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of brush growing up through it, and she was looking in there.
Yeah,
I don't know if she was looking for a nesting spot or
she might be starting. Yeah,
they should be. That would be a good spot because. Coyotes aren't really going to be hanging around there. And
yeah, the only thing they got to worry about next to those highways and stuff is, the typical nest predators like the possums and skunks and stuff, coons.
Yep.
But, hopefully we have a good dry year. I mean, last year was pretty good. At the end of May, hopefully just that rain kind of holds off and it just doesn't get really cold and wet.
And the freaking wind.
Yeah, that screws up the hatch big times. When they're cold and wet, I think a lot of them die.
Yeah, they get pneumonia.
Yep.
But, yeah, I hope, like, last year we had quite a lot of windy days, and it just knocks the fun right out of it when you can't.
Yeah, you can't hear nothing.
They can't hear you, you can't hear them.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah, what did I get up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning for?
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have just slept in and went to work today and saved my energy for another day.
But we had that bird, Amy missed. It was a cold, snowy, windy day, and I'm like, we got to get off this mountain into the low country or something.
Yeah.
And I just let out, I cut and yelp real loud, and then kind of jokingly put my hand up like this to listen, and I was like, let's go. And we're walking off, and we both stopped like Was that a gobble?
Or was it a woodpecker or
Yeah.
what? Yeah.
We both stopped, looking at each other, and he gobbles again. He was significantly closer.
Yeah.
I mean, this bird came running on a day you would not expect. You know,
Yeah.
they're funny like that. But she missed it 3 times.
Yeah, well, it happens. There's a lot more air around them than there is in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She that was her first year hunting, and it was 2020, so she was furloughed from work. She got a lot of seat time in, learned a lot of lessons.
Oh, yeah.
Not shooting early enough, shooting too early.
Yep. Yep.
She got her first.
When to move the gun, when
Yep.
not to. Yeah.
That first hunt she did perfectly. That thing, she spotted it before me, and he was kind of walking, horizontal in front of us, and he walked behind a tree, and she swung up.
Yep.
He popped out from behind the tree, and she rolled him.
Yep.
I'm like, where did you've been hunting for 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Where did you learn that?
Yeah.
I don't know. She's like, I don't know. I just,
Yeah. Figured his eyes were covered. I might as well get away with it.
I
Yeah.
was like, well, there's grown men who screw that up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You get the adrenaline flowing. People make bad decisions a lot of times. But
Yeah.
It's fun. I can't wait. I like the later season, to tell you the truth. I like it when there's foliage.
Yep.
I'm going to try to shoot a few with the bow without a blind. It's fun running and gunning them when you get a little bit of foliage. I tie a bunch of... I go to the craft store. I think it's like Michael's or something, and you can get a bunch of fake leaves and everything.
Yeah.
And they're on a bendable wire. You can kind of fill your bow with those.
Huh.
Man, it's like having a ground blind right in front of you. And you can draw your bow behind that and kind of hide behind it while the bird's coming in. And that's a lot of fun for late, especially late season. When you get some foliage, you can get away with it.
Yep.
Right now, early season when you get no foliage, especially once it gets early morning, it doesn't matter, or an overcast day. But man, if the sun's shining,
Yeah.
there's like shade is a premium in the woods. There's none of it.
Yeah.
And it's real hard to get covered up because you got nothing to hide behind. So
Yeah, and they got to be in the wide open with a bow.
yeah, and I gotta draw, I gotta do so.
Yeah,
Bust a couple early with the 28 gauge, and then try to shoot some with the bow later on.
Yeah.
When we get some foliage, that'll
Yep.
be fun. But I'm still going to be looking for antlers for a while. I still got a few deer that I'm trying to find antlers from, and I'll probably go up to. My plan is to go to Maine, northern New Hampshire, somewhere around there, and just tent right at the truck and try to find some moose antlers once the snow melts.
Yep.
I'd like to find a couple good paddles. And I'm getting more and more into that than turkey hunting every year, but the turkeys are fun too. But
You've killed what, 100 of them or something?
I've killed a lot of them with a bow too, but killed a pile of them. But I like turkey meat, so
Yeah.
I'm going to try to shoot 3 or 4 of them this year too.
Yep.
I didn't get out west this year, but that Nebraska trip is really... Nebraska and South Dakota is super fun.
Yeah.
End of March, beginning of April. I'm going to try to make it next year. It's you can hunt them all day. So you can hunt them in the morning. You can go walk some river bottoms midday, pick up a pile of antlers because there's deer everywhere, and then hunt them again in the afternoon. Get them roosted. If you don't get a good setup on them in the afternoon, at least then you know where they're roosted for the next morning.
Yep.
And you can shoot 3 longbeards. And that part of Nebraska is pretty fun because you get the hybrid from Merriam's and Rio's. So you can have birds strutting. You can see birds of every color. You
Yep.
can see a Merriam's white all the way to Eastern brown. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah, they're not 100% Merriam's.
yeah,
right?
they're all mixed up with everything. You'll shoot some that are classic Merriam's colors, but most of the ones you're shooting are hybrid. They're all mixed up. They're beautiful birds.
Yeah, we want to get out there next year too.
It's fun.
This year is just, I kind of decided late anyways, but with the price of fuel
Yeah.
and all that, it's just might be worse next year. Who knows?
Yeah. I don't know. Everything's kind of up in the air right now.
Yeah.
But everything with me lined up. I had to meet with people for work and everything in April, and I just had the way all my work fell and everything. I had more time throughout the whole month of March, and then once it got to be the first part of that season was going to open, I think it's the 28th it starts. That's when I got busy again. So I just pounded the timber in March and got all my work for deer hunting done.
If you were to pick a week to go out there, what's like the ideal?
Well, the first couple weeks are archery only. Like the first week or two is archery only before any shotguns start.
And they're still pretty flocked up.
They're still really bunched up, but you can peel them away. You can still peel them away, find isolated birds. And we've, with the right setup, we've had 20 birds come in at once. It's all up in the air. But I mean, it's all cattle country, and there's a lot of turkeys. It's just fun. And then finding the sheds is just a cool bonus.
So probably like mid-April.
Mid-April's awesome. Yeah. And you can hunt them all the way into May.
Yeah.
I mean, their spring season is really long, especially you get up into South Dakota, and you could go up into the Black Hills. I don't know when their season is, but you got one tag to start with in South Dakota, and then you can go to the Black Hills a little bit later. I think it's April 15th or 10th, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'd have to see. But you go out there and you could shoot 3 in Nebraska, and then you could go up and shoot 2 in South Dakota, and then head home before anything's even close to starting here.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I want to do it for sure.
It's fun.
People look at me funny, like you're gonna go, like it's a turkey. They're around here. Like,
Yeah.
Well, it's not. It sounds cliche, but I'm not really chasing the bird.
Yeah.
Kind of chasing the adventure.
Yeah,
Driving
I
out
like to
west
get away from home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See some new shit.
Yeah. If I'm hunting around here, you can't get away from the cell phone. You can try to leave it in the truck if you want, but you look at it and there's calls from work, there's calls from and you're close by, so they know you're not out of town.
Yep.
If I'm out of town, I'm just like, I'm out of town, I can't help you. I can't. So it's just it's better to have a vacation. It's not all about just killing a turkey. It's just getting out of town in the spring and enjoying it. And finding sheds. There's mule deer and whitetails running around, so you have the chance of finding a shed from either.
Yeah, or even seeing, like, I've never seen a mule deer.
Yeah, it's cool. It's great. I love driving out west. I go every chance I get. So, except for this year, I didn't get out there. But
well, maybe you'll draw that Iowa tag.
Absolutely. I got 5 points. I'm planning on hunting Iowa.
Is there obviously it's a point system, but does it get to a certain point where they just
5
give you a tag?
5 is like you're gonna get a tag. It was a really good chance of me getting one last year with 4, but I didn't get drawn. But I know probably 3 different people that drew with 4 tags, 4 points last year. So I'm guaranteed one pretty much with 5 this year. So I've been, looking at the maps, figuring out public and out of the way access spots, and there's some good looking spots. So I think I'm going to take a kayak and stay there until I either fill a tag or I get sick of it, one or the other.
Yeah.
Go out the end of last week of October, and it's taken me 5 years to get the license, so I'm going to put in some time.
Yep, absolutely.
That's why I worked so hard in March, getting everything situated in all the states back here, because I get all my spring scouting done. I can get back from Iowa. I may be back as early as the beginning of November. I may be back mid-November. But I know I'll be able to hit the ground running once I get back home in Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, whatever, because I've done a ton of scouting. And I got a bunch of cameras out already. But the spring scouting is key. I've done a lot of that this year, so I'm feeling pretty good. And there's some good bucks still alive, and it should be a good year. I'm excited.
Yep. Yeah, I haven't been out as much as I would have liked to, but still some time. Got to look for antlers. And
yeah, it's not going to green up until mid-May.
Yeah.
May 10th or so. High elevations, you got even longer. You got till the 3rd week of May, so you got tons of time. You got a month still.
Yeah. Yeah, before the
But as soon as that
horseflies carry away.
Yeah, so you get the insects and stuff to deal with. But as soon as that snow melts, that's like my favorite time to hit the mountains. There's nothing like it. It's just it's awesome. Find those antlers before the porcupines and squirrels do.
Yep. Coyotes carry them around, play with them.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. There's one deer I'm trying to match up, and I'm done. I've put so many miles in trying to find that other side. I'm pretty convinced something else has carried the antler off.
Whether person or dog.
Yeah, I don't think it's a person. I haven't seen any sign of a human up there, but I'm pretty sure a coyote carried it off. Or he ended up, I got him walking by the camera. I know he shed right around January 15th because I left a camera in there. I got him walking by the morning of January 15th with both sides on. And then I got him walking by. He had the coloration on him and everything. I can tell it's the same deer. And he's walking back by a day later with nothing on his head. And then he's walking by day after day. He's kind of on a feed to bed pattern in the middle of winter there. So I know it's not like he had one side for a week and carried one side for a long time. And where I found that one was right in the middle of a food source, right in the middle of the oaks. And I have scoured that whole side hill. I don't know what he could have done. I know he lost them both probably the same day. It's just, I think something picked up one of those antlers or I mean, this is the times that makes me want to have a shed dog.
Yeah.
I just wanted to match that deer up because it'd be cool to have his match set and kill him.
Yeah.
That's the goal this year, is to kill one of these deer that I got the match set from. And I found two nice match sets and one half. And then there's a couple other deer that I was hunting last year. I couldn't figure out where they wintered. So I don't know where the hell their antlers are, but
yeah. So is that kind of the strategy? Like, are you kind of monitoring where they are in the winter, and then you just grade the feeding areas or bedding areas?
Yeah, bedding is like if I can figure out what the food source is, where they were feeding, from the end of December until the snow starts to melt the very beginning of March. And this year the oaks were really spotty, and I'm finding most of my antlers in the bedding because the deer were they got an established bedding area, but they're filtering out from there and they're doing a lot of browsing. Like you find a hemlock that blew down in the middle of the winter, that thing is orange right now. There's no bark on it. They ate every bit of green off of it. Yep. So those deer, when I see that, I know they weren't, solely eating acorns. These deer were eating everything that they could because there was browse, there was very spotty acorns. So they were walking around a lot. It's really hard to match up the antlers this year. It seems like they were just real spread out on the mountain. So I just like to put another piece of the puzzle together. I find his antlers. I know he survived. And then through spring scouting, I don't find him dead on that side hill. So if he made it into the spring to now, he's healthy. He's good to go. Now I got, spots where I'm probably going to pick him up in the summer. Try to get some pictures of him in the summer so I got an idea how big he's going to be, what kind of a jump he does. And then I know where a lot of these bucks are going to be in the fall because I got pictures of them working scrapes the end of October all through November. And one of these bucks I actually saw on Thanksgiving Day. So I know a lot about these deer. Hopefully they got some big bone on their head this year, which they should. So it's exciting to follow them along like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that historical data is paramount. I mean,
I found a lot less sheds. I found a lot less sheds this year than I normally find because the deer didn't migrate. Like none of these deer shifted more than 2 or 3 miles on that mountain, it seemed like, in a lot of these spots where I found sheds. And a lot of years previous, there'd be a ton of acorns, and we'd get substantial snow, 3 or 4 feet. And a lot of times I'll be picking up sheds from deer that don't live within 10 miles of there.
Yep.
But this year it wasn't the case. This year is probably as close as I've seen in a little while, where you can find a shed and you can probably kill that deer right about where you found the shed, because they didn't move all that far from where they were Thanksgiving. Once it got to be post-rut, these deer didn't move very far. A lot of these deer that I'm looking for now, they didn't really move very far from where they were post-rut. And a lot of times they're migrating big time. Once it gets to be mid-December, these deer are 5, 6, 7 miles from where they were pre-rut.
Yep.
And it just wasn't the case this year. They didn't move as far.
They didn't have to.
Yeah.
We never really we had quite a bit of cold, but
they didn't
really got deep snow.
They didn't congregate like they normally did either. There's not like some of these yards I would walk into and they'd be 30, 40 plus deer in there. This year it was maybe 15 in there, and you could find several spots on the mountain where they were balled up like that. There were no more than a dozen deer. So it just wasn't when there's a ton of acorns, they can all ball up on one south facing slope, but this year they couldn't. There just wasn't the food. And they just stayed spread out. So it's just a little tougher finding sheds, but mainly I was in there spring scouting just to get everything dialed in and trying to find out stuff that I missed from last year. And that's the funnest part, is figuring out stuff when you start to find different another bedding area, or walk a different side of the mountain. You're looking at the map, you're like, oh, I've never walked that section. Now is the time to do it. You can walk right in there and it doesn't matter. You're walking right in that buck's bedroom, it doesn't matter. You can walk in there, oh, look at that. No, that buck's been bedding right in. Look at all the rubs. You can see where he's bedding. You can figure that stuff out, and then you can, have that marked on a map. And that more stuff you're starting to put together on the map and logging it, and all the little notes that you take, man, then you can step back and kind of pan back on that mountain, and you're like, wow, all right, now I just figured another piece out. And that's like, that goes along with like that 3-year plan. In like 3 years, you really start to dial in a mountain. And I'm really starting to dial a couple of them in now. So now it's just a matter of keeping tabs on those mountains until there's a giant running around on it, And if I have to follow some of these deer around for 2 or 3 years and find their sheds, and that's all part of it. Just keep searching different mountains and trying to find a big one and wait till some of these are big enough.
Do you find that that's a good indication of a buck's bedding area is, in some real thick laurel or something, and there's just rubs everywhere?
Yeah. Like when I find a buck bed, it's a lot of times it's in a real strategic spot where you couldn't really approach him from very many places and kill him easily. He's got real good escape routes. And, I pay attention to the ones where he's bedding on the leeward side of the hill for the predominant wind directions, because a lot of times I'm hunting in north or west winds. So a lot of those bedding areas are the ones that I'm really trying to seek out, because that's kind of the weather we get most November. But it's also important to try to find the bedding areas where he'd be. Let's say we get a string of south wind. That's like the hardest wind for me to hunt, is most of my setups, my approach, everything is really screwed up with a south wind. So if the more of those bedding areas you can find, that even if you don't know if it's a buck bedding or doe bedding, if you can just mark it as known bedding areas, it's really helpful for your approach and for your exit. And if you're moving around midday, moving stands so you don't bump them. The bedding areas are just something I want to know where they are.
Yep.
So I don't have to walk in there during the season. I don't want to walk, if I want to crowd it, that's fine. But I know just about where those deer are going to be bedded on that hill. And that knowledge is power. It really lets gives you a big advantage over anybody else that's trying to kill those deer.
Yeah, I was scouting I think it was 2 weekends ago. Place I'm trying to learn more. And I just went to, just slowly picking sections of woods, until I got the whole thing covered.
Yep.
I went in this one section. Right off the road, I see a rub. Going a little further, see a scrape. Open hardwood scrape, probably just a one-time deal.
Yeah.
So I got walking around the laurel where it's thick, seeing all these rubs, and then look up ahead and there's this giant dugout scrape under a hemlock tree, right in the just thick as hell all around it. I said, yep.
You could probably kill one there at the end of October.
This is worth paying attention to.
Yeah. Those are good ones to put a camera on.
Yep.
Even
and there's perfect trees.
Yeah.
Perfect trees to hunt out of the saddle, like right 15 yards from it. Like you couldn't ask for anything better. It's
those primary scrapes like that are, if you can't hunt them there, like if they're not coming there during daylight, at least it gives you a great inventory of what's there.
Yeah. It's a great inventory camera to have there. Yep. What direction they're coming from.
Yeah, just know what there is for bucks alive on there. That's super valuable information. An incentive to get up and hike your ass in there,
Yeah.
There's a 140 buck running around on that hill, it's pretty easy to get motivated to walk in there when it's single digit temperatures or whatever,
Yeah.
just long walk. It doesn't matter. You know what's there.
Yep.
That's what I use cameras for, is mainly inventory. Letting me know they're there. Those big mountains like that, it's kind of, I've never been able to pattern a buck like he's there every single day.
Right.
I've had some deer who are there that, they'll hit a scrape 3 times a week maybe, but it's like, it's like Steve Shirk talks about the 3-day plan. I totally agree with that 100%. Like, you're hunting a big buck on a mountain like that. You may have to hunt that stand 3 days before you kill him.
Yep.
Before he even comes through.
Makes his rounds.
Yeah, you sit there 1 or 2 days and you're like, this isn't working out. It's like, well, he might not even be on that side hill. He's got a circuit he's making. The deer aren't using that part of the mountain that day. You got to give it 3 or 4 days. That's why having that clean entrance and exit is key. Then you can do that. You can hunt that stand 3 or 4 times in a row if you got a good clean entrance and exit. Because those does figure out you're in there, then you're done.
Because if they leave, there's no reason for him to.
Yeah. And it seems like the bigger the mountain, those deer that are in those big woods, they deal with pressure a lot less than an urban deer. Like an urban deer, he's smelling humans every day of his life.
Yeah.
Those big woods bucks,
they won't tolerate it as much.
They don't tolerate it, at all. It takes them a while to forgive it. It seems like, when I put a camera in, I treat it as though it's a tree stand, like I've hunted it. I go in there on days when it's pouring rain. Someday when I know I can get away with it, when I can go in, if I got to go in there and check it, I can go in there and check it without messing it up. Because if I walk in there and check a camera, that's just like me going in there and hanging a stand and hunting it.
They don't know the difference.
It's the same amount of scent. It's that's how I view it. So
they're not sitting there going, well, he's just checking a camera. He didn't have a weapon on him.
Yeah, they don't know.
No.
Yeah, no.
You're in there, they're scared.
Yeah. And that's the problem with hunting around like around apple orchards and clear cuts around here, is because there's a lot of bird hunters.
Yeah.
You could have a buck dialed in where he's bedding in this one cut. Well, you don't know if someone went bird hunting and banging a shotgun off in there during the day, and you go in there in the afternoon trying to kill that deer, and you're like, he's just not here. Well, he's just not there that day. He got bumped out of there by bird hunters.
Right.
Maybe 3 or 4 days before he's back in there, but
they will come back if their escape tactic worked.
Yeah, well, they can hear the bird hunters coming a mile away too, and they just avoid them because they're not viewing them as a predator.
Right.
It's just I think they view that kind of stuff totally different, like hikers and stuff. But still, the scent shouldn't be in some of those sensitive areas. So that's why when I go in there in the spring and I find those bedding areas, man, it's nice if I don't ever have to walk in there again unless I'm following his blood trail. That's pretty much the only time I'm walking in there is the spring.
Because you could blow every deer off that mountain and it don't matter.
Yeah. If you got a good bedding area dialed in, it's nice to know exactly where it is and how the wind's relating to it, and it gives you a better idea if there's oaks all over this one mountain, but where he's bedding. You're going to have an idea how he's going to come out of that bedding cover. And how he's going to go back into it in the mornings. It just gives you a better idea how those deer are using the mountain.
So when you're scouting in the spring, you're finding those bedding areas, looking for sheds, all that. But how are you hunting those in the fall? Like, obviously you don't want to go in the middle of it.
Yep.
So are you trying to find the scrapes on the outside edges?
See, a lot of those
travel routes.
A lot of those. I'm trying to find the last scrape before it gets into that cover. But a lot of times I like to know where that buck is bedding. But I don't crowd it because I'm not hunting them during a food pattern. I'm mainly hunting these bucks during pre-rut when they're starting to work those scrapes. So a lot of times I'm trying to hunt them in relation to how they're running that scrape line and keeping the bedding in mind. The thermals play a huge role in how I set up on them, because a lot of times those thermals are dropping first thing in the morning. So it's real tricky to try to kill that deer at first light when he's returning to that bedding area, because the thermals are dropping, and a lot of times they're bedding on the upper third of that mountain. A lot of times when that deer's walking, he's got the thermals in his favor walking into that bedding area. And then once he's bedding, the thermals can change and they're coming right up the mountain, right to him. So it's really hard to set directly below that bedding area, because he's going to catch you. It seems like. So I try to find a pinch point on the same level as that bed where he's going to be heading to the bed, or I'll figure out where once he gets closer to the rut, I'm then concentrating on the outskirts of the doe bedding. And then I know about where the buck bedding is and how the bucks are going to go from point A to point B, or from doe bedding to doe bedding. And that's when I start concentrating on those, those spots in between doe bedding and pinch points. But that pre-rut, a lot of times I'm trying to find a primary scrape that I know I can kill him, that's close to his bedding area, that I can get into, that's bulletproof, that I have the thermals are either pulling my scent off of a steep drop off, or, in the evenings when the thermals come down, if there's a waterway or something, it's going to pull your scent right to that waterway and drag it right off the mountain, right in that waterway. So trying to find a stand site where you can cut him off where you have an advantage. You got to have an edge. And just crowding his bedding area sometimes doesn't work if the terrain doesn't dictate you can get away with it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like a lot of situations I can't crowd his bedding area because I don't have enough of an advantage. It's too thick leading up to it, and he can get my wind easy enough. So sometimes that's why I like it pre-rut, when they start moving a little bit more in daylight, and I can get a little bit further away from his bedding area. And, they're on their feet in daylight a little bit more.
Still catch them in daylight.
Yeah. Because some of those deer just have especially if they're a 5-year-old deer, they've got a bulletproof setup in those mountains. They're really tough to kill. And pretty much the only way that you could approach him is at the same level as him on that side hill, without having some sort of a wind advantage. Because a lot of these deer that I'm hunting are bedding in that top third of the hill, so that you got the wind coming off the top of the mountain, and it has that swirling effect right about where he is. And then you get the thermals. If the sun's hitting that side hill, the thermals are dragging some scent up the hill. So he's just got so many advantages. It's really tough to crowd the bedding area in those mountains, I've found, for me. So I kind of concentrate on pinch points that are, maybe 200 yards away from that bed, somewhere where the terrain will give me an edge.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you said, you can't. I mean, there's some spots that would be good to kill a deer in, but you can't kill them there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And
it's usually spots that have a ton of sign.
Yeah.
And the reason he's making a ton of sign there is because he feels super comfortable there, because he can smell everything. He can, he knows he's got it. He knows he's got every advantage there. That's why he's laying all that sign down. He's spending a ton of time there. I just need him to spend 5 seconds in front of the stand, and then whack, he's dead. So I just need to figure out where is he vulnerable, and usually where he's vulnerable, he's not laying down a ton of sign. It's just a little teeny pinch point that he's cruising through to get to where he's making more sign. I mean, a classic example was like I killed that big 5 this year, and I had my cousins come in to help me drag him out. And my one cousin was just like, this area I don't even know what made you set up here. There's like hardly any sign here. And I'm like, well, if you'd put everything together, like I've walked this whole place in the spring, I've got everything out. This is the best place out of all this. I mean, yeah, you can go down the ridge a half mile. You can go up the ridge a half, 3/4 of a mile, and it's loaded with sign. But you can't kill him there with how the wind is. I know he's going through this little teeny finger, and it's a little teeny strip of cover, and there's multiple factors pinching him together that are really subtle. Like you can't see him unless it's no foliage and it's springtime, and you can go in there, and I figured that out, and I was just banking on it, and I shot him at 9:00 in the morning. He was heading to his bed.
Did you have a camera right there?
I never got a picture of him right there, but I got pictures of him a half mile either side of it.
And you just figured.
But I couldn't get the wind right where I was getting pictures of him. I just had the cameras there to let me know he was alive. I was like, the only place that I can kill him, or the reason that I wasn't killing him in the other spots, is because he was smelling me, and he was just avoiding me. Because I think the deer is, he's 6+ years old. I haven't got the age back yet, but some of them big bucks on those public chunks, they just avoid hunters, and they just smell them and they can just avoid them. And it's in 90% of those spots on public land, people are hunting where there's tons of sign. Well, they're not factoring in the thermals and just the way the wind is blowing, but the thermals and the way the terrain will treat your scent and how it moves. If people aren't calculating that in, those deer are pegging you. And those 6.5-year-old bucks aren't going to stand down there and blow like a doe.
No.
You're never going to know if you get pegged.
They're just going to screw.
You're never going to know it. You're not going to, you're just like, oh, I didn't see him today. Well, that deer just figured you out. And it's just a matter of, you got to keep screwing up before you figure out how to really read it. And that's what I'm slowly learning. I'm getting better every year at it. But it's just, there's some spots that, man, it just makes you want to hang a stand right away, but there's no way that you can hunt it without getting busted. And just that just comes with experience, trying to figure, being able to recognize those spots when you see them, because they're traps. They're terrible traps. I mean, it can look phenomenal, and you're just like, man, I'm walking it over in the spring, and I'm like, there's no way that I could get in here. First off, the first thing I look at is entrance and exit. I'm like, how in the hell would I get in here and hunt this without spooking every deer on this? I couldn't. I'm walking through multiple food sources, or I got to really walk real close to that bedding area, getting in here. I'm going to bump too many deer coming in here, and I'm going to be putting tracks everywhere where I know deer are going to be walking. So it's like that takes a stand site right off the map for me right away. If I got no clean entrance and exit, that's the first thing that I eliminate. And the second thing is, how am I protected with what kind of a wind, and what are the thermals doing here? That's the second one. If I'm like, well, I can be bulletproof on a north or a west wind, and man, even if the thermals are screwing with me right here, I got a bank where I can set up on the edge of that bank, and it can drag my scent off the mountain, and there's like no deer sign down there. Those deer, because of this creek flowing off the mountain or something, or it's real ledgy, those deer aren't walking below me. I'm going to be fine right there. I got 250, 300 yards of safe travel that my scent can go there. I'm not going to booger any deer. I could kill that deer right here, and there may not be very much scent there, very much sign, but he's going through there. You can see his track, or you can just look at it on a map and you can figure out, well, he's got to go through there. He's just walking through there. He's not hooking his horns anywhere through there. He's not laying scrapes down, but he's going through there to get to point A to point B. That's a hell of a spot to try to kill him. And you can always start off there. And if it's not working, then you can try to get more aggressive with him as the season goes. But I try to find those spots where I'm somewhat aggressive on trying to kill him, but I'm also trying to be safe so I can hunt as long as I can, hunt that buck, because I don't want him moving somewhere else on the mountain. So,
will you go as far as like wind mapping with like milkweed, see how the thermals are pulling it?
Yeah, a lot of times, out of a stand, once I get up there to the height, because it all depends on how high you are in the tree too.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to be a touch higher. But there was one stand that I had when I got really high, the sun would hit me on that hill before it would get down low, and I could drop a piece of milkweed and it would drop like 4 feet, and it would go right back up. And it would go higher than I was in the stand, and you could see it head right off the mountain. But if you were low, you were probably 7-8 feet lower than that. You drop that milkweed, there's no sun hitting you there, and that milkweed would just drop right down the mountain wicked low. It would hit that cold snap still, and it was still pulling down off the mountain. But, I knew that I could get in that stand and I would be safe like an hour after daylight. So I was never in a hurry to get to some of those pinch points, because I'd get there right at the crack of daylight and set up, and I'm like, the deer aren't going to be here until mid-morning anyhow, because the bedding area is right there. I'm pretty close to the bedding area, just a couple 100 yards, but I don't need to be there in the dark, because if a deer happens to come below me in the dark, it's definitely going to smell me. I really want the sun to be hitting this side hill, so the thermals are good. So I don't want to be in that stand in the dark. So and then there's some where it's safe, where you can be there in the total dark and sit there till the afternoon. And then when the thermals switch in the afternoon, it's real hard to find a stand you can sit in all day and be safe, unless it's a total ridgetop stand where you've got consistent wind.
Yeah.
But with the hills and valleys and stuff like that, you've got your scent. You got a big risk of it going everywhere.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, you just got to hope that, like you said, it's just a brief encounter.
Yeah, I just want him passing through. I don't need to know. I don't need to be sitting in a stand where he's going to be, making 3 or 4 scrapes in front of me, or or he's going to be eating on acorns, or he's going to be bedded, 50 yards away from me. I don't want to be anywhere near those, right there where those spots are. I want to kill him where he's just passing through, because the way I look at it, if he's just passing through there, he knows that that's a vulnerable spot for him, and he's just cruising through there. There may not be anything attractive right there, no good trees for him to make a rub. Those are the spots that I look for to kill him, and those are the spots that are overlooked by like 99% of people, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because there isn't the sign.
Yeah.
But like you said, if he knows he's out in the wide open, he's not going to stop and make a rub. He's just...
Yeah, I just want to know where he's walking through. And with cameras, I can figure out if I can put a point A and a point B together, and they're less than a mile apart, I can find that point in the middle where I can kill him. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that point in between where I know he is point A and where I know he is point B. I'm trying to find out where in between there is he the most vulnerable. And it may not be there. You may need to find a point C where, those 2 points, he may not have a spot where he's real vulnerable right there, but you can try to pick him up where he's going in a different spot where there's another doe bedding area or something like that. Some of them deer are just, they've got the reason they're 6+ years old is they've got a hell of a spot. And the good thing is once you figure it out and you kill one there, it's like a vacuum. There's going to be another big buck in there, but it may take 5 or 6 years. And guess what? That buck is probably going to be doing the same thing that one was doing. So that's the fun part, is figuring it out. And some of those deer, like in Vermont, some of those spots are bulletproof. Like I couldn't figure out where to kill some of these Vermont deer that I've killed tracking. So I would be in there pulling my hair out trying to shoot that deer out of a stand, and I couldn't do it. And I get snow on the ground. I have that deer dead by 8:30 in the morning. So it's like I just needed to be able to know exactly where he was in front of me and track him and kill him. So I think some of those bucks just live in areas where that's the best way to kill them, is tracking them. And there's some that you can find that you can kill out of a stand. So that's why I work my ass off all spring, so I can try to figure out my stand sites, because you can't count on tracking snow.
Nope.
So if I can figure it out enough spots where I can get good, reliable stand sites in, I'll be hunting him out of a stand. And then if I get tracking snow, boom, I know a lot about that deer. Finding his track is easy. I can walk in there and find his track, and then he's in serious trouble if it's gun season and tracking snow. So
yeah, a good windy day.
Yeah. If everything falls together, man, you got good snow. It's the most aggressive way to kill a whitetail. I mean, you're walking right into his bedroom, or you're right on his heels.
You don't got to worry about bumping him.
Yeah. I'm gonna bump him.
If you bump
guaranteed.
If you bump him, you know how old that track is now.
Yeah. I mean, I say guaranteed. I mean, if you're tracking them I hate tracking them during the rut, because you can get on a buck that's just like on a highway and you never catch up to him. But those, I like bow hunting them all through the rut because they're on their feet a lot. And if they're on their feet a lot, you can find a funnel to kill them in. You just got to be patient. You just got to hunt it smart. And once it gets to be post-rut, that's when I'm really inclined to get out of a stand if we get snow. I'm just like, there's a gun season in one of these states. I'll go find one of those big bucks that I know about. I'm going to go track him.
Yep.
And tracking is just a good break from sitting in a stand for 8-10 hours a day too.
Yeah, exactly.
You've been sitting your ass off in the stand trying to kill bucks, and then all of a sudden we get 5-6 inches of snow on the ground. Boy, it feels nice to stretch the legs and go do something totally different. And to me, it's the most exciting way to kill a deer, is tracking them.
I love the lack of shit you got to bring.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely. Yeah. Your
pack,
bare minimum.
Your wool, and you just go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and the whole story is laid out in front of you. Like if I was as excited the whole time I'm sitting in a stand as I was tracking a big buck, like this past year in Vermont with the antler marks in the snow, and he'd dig up ferns and you'd see the antler marks in the snow, and
that was a hell of a day too.
It was just like, man, if you were that excited, you couldn't sit in a stand for more than 3 or 4 days. You'd be mentally exhausted sitting there all that pumped up the whole time. I get all excited just talking about it, man. It's just so much fun tracking deer. But and tracking them, you can learn a ton. Like I can,
you can find those spots you're talking about.
Absolutely. I'll map out where, when I track that deer and jump him that first time, that first time that I jumped him in, that's a real valuable bed to have marked. And go back there in the spring and look at that. Why was that deer bedded there? Go look at it with no snow on the ground, no foliage, and then just sit right down in that deer's bed and look at what he was looking at when you were coming up that hill and everything. And the more big buck beds that you know are big buck beds, it seems like that you crouch down in and you sit there and you look at it. The more of them you look at, the easier it'll be for you to identify them.
Yep.
And I just don't think people take the time to do that. Like, you just got to go back in there in the spring and look at it, because it's a different world in the spring. It's just so much easier for me to see exactly why they did what they did. And there's a reason he did what he did. You got to go back in there and see it in the spring.
Yep.
So it's fun. I love the whole thing from start to finish. There's so much to learn. I mean, I learn so much every year. You're never going to have it figured out.
No.
But you can just keep putting all the mistakes together, because that's what it is. That's the only way you learn, is by making a mistake. And you put all those mistakes together and then just try not to make them another time.
Yeah.
You know, and I love the whole process. It's fun.
Yeah. And you'll repeat, you know, you're like, why am I doing this? I know better than to be doing this.
Yeah. Well, the reason the learning curve, I think, with tracking is such a slap in the face is because you see it all happen right there in the snow.
Yep.
I think it's a slower process to learn out of a stand, because you never know when you bumped that deer. You know, that buck's not letting you know. It's not like he yells up through the woods, "Hey, got you. I smelled you." You know, he's not. Yeah. Those big bucks aren't going to sit down there and blow at you out of a stand. I personally have never seen a big buck just stand there and blow at me like a doe. Like when I see a buck coming by my stand and I see him catch my wind, you know, he's within 80 yards or whatever, and I see him catch my wind, the reaction is always exactly the same. Eyeballs bug out of their head. They just look right in that direction, right where you are. They turn right around and they're gone. And they don't make a sound. They're gone. He does not advertise that he figured you out. He doesn't need to. He's just like, you're never going to know when you bump that buck. And I think with tracking, when you screw up, well, you're looking at the whole story unfolding right in the snow. So it's a little easier to know when you've screwed up when you're tracking. So
that big one I screwed up on in New Hampshire, he blew at me once real quick.
Yeah.
But that was because I just simply surprised him. I walked right up on him.
Yeah, usually you get like, one or two short ones in that situation, and that's because you're walking onto them. It's totally different than them walking onto your setup, I think.
Yeah, because he wasn't smelling me.
Yeah,
I just scared the shit out of him.
Yeah, they get moose and bears and all sorts of stuff walking into them, you know. But when they smell you, a human sitting somewhere,
yeah, they're just like, whoop.
Yeah, everything's all quiet, so they're not going to make any. They're just going to slip out of there.
Yep.
Gone. Okay, I know he's right up there. They know exactly where you are when they smell you. You know, it's a fun.
That one still hurts.
Oh, absolutely.
That was a giant, giant buck.
It's got to hurt, because that's the only way you get it ingrained into memory. So
well, the problem with that, and I talked to Timmy about it too, and he's like, dude, he's like, you should have been ready. He's like, you had the right idea, because I was looking. I knew I was close to him. I was looking for his J hook.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He just. It was the second to last day of rifle season in New Hampshire. He was just tired. He just walked. He just bedded right in his tracks. Just plopped down.
Yeah.
In a stupid spot too.
Yeah.
And I'm looking left and right. I hear him blow, and as soon as I figured out where it was coming from, he was bounding away.
Yeah.
With at least 10 points.
Yeah.
You know, big, wide.
And that just comes with, you know, you just get those feelings when you're tracking them. After a while, you'll acquire it.
He said you should have had that gun shouldered.
Yeah.
And you should have been ready, because, you know, I explained to him, like,
his feet are all real close together. You could tell he's browsing, or he's really walking.
He was
slow.
heading up that hill to go bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
Yeah, he's like when I see that stuff, he's like, my hair stands up on the back of my neck and it doesn't come down until I've pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
He's like, because I know it's
I got my
It might
finger.
be-
I got my finger right against the safety.
Yep.
I'm all ready. That gun is like I'm standing at the skeet range.
Yep.
Like I'm ready when I'm slipping along.
But I just, again, just making mistakes. But
That's the number one mistake.
because I'd been J-hooked so many times,
Yeah.
I'm like, you're not getting me this time, you bastard.
Yeah. I mean, if it's steep terrain and I see a buck doing that and he's kind of heading, I'll try to stay above his track 9 times out of 10. If he's cutting along a side hill, because that's the number one time they'll catch you. Is they'll be going along a side hill and all of a sudden you'll see where his track just goes 90 degrees up the hill and he's already got you. So I mean, I've mainly it's in woods that I know really well, but I'll know he's heading to a bedding area. I will cut off his track and approach that bedding area from a different way. And I mean, I have caught him standing on the bench. I've caught him in their beds and shot him that way. But when you don't know the woods, like you're hunting a stranger, and you're in a big chunk.
It's hard
of
to
woods,
leave the track.
You can't leave the track. You can't cut unless you really know the woods.
Yeah.
For me, anyways.
Yeah, and
I've never had it. I've only cut off the track when I knew the woods really well, and I thought I was 99% sure what that deer was doing, and that's when I cut off the track. But other than that, you can miss subtleties when you cut off the track and lose a lot of time. You can think he's cutting up the hill, and he didn't. He just went up the hill 10 yards and did some browsing, and then went right back.
Yep.
He's still plowing right along on that side hill, and you're up there poking along thinking he's going to be bedded right. You're looking for him down off the bank.
wasting time.
You may spend 40 minutes, an hour doing that, and he's not any. He's still a half mile ahead of you, 3/4 of a mile. So it's
Yeah, the other thing about my situation was I thought I had jumped him because I came to a spot where you could tell he turned and looked on his backtrack. Maybe he either saw me coming up through, didn't like that bed, or the wind shifted and he smelled me.
Yeah.
And there was running tracks leaving that. So I followed the running tracks for like 40 yards. And I'm like, oh. So I went right back to where I was. I made a fire, had my sandwich, waited a half hour.
Yeah.
And then I walked another like 150, 200 yards. And that's when I blew it. Because his running track stopped all of a sudden. I was like, oh, shit. I just wasted a half hour.
See, it could have just been a big limb blowing out of a tree or something, too.
Yeah, anything.
They hear all that, and that'll make them skitter ahead a little bit,
So for people who think the fire affects the deer, he was bedded 200 yards away. I was sitting there having a campfire, so it doesn't matter.
Funny. That waiting, though, after you jump them is key.
Yep.
That's what killed that deer this past year for me in Vermont. I followed that deer around and then jumped him on the backside of that beaver bog. And where he was bedded, he had me pegged. Like it was a little bit of a clearing. And I kind of followed his track along the edge of that beaver bog. And he'd walked along like 4 of them already. And he walked along the edge of that beaver bog for about 60, 70 yards. And it was kind of open. And then he cut right across the bog and went right onto a little teeny knob on the other side of it and was bedded right on that bank staring at me. So he saw me as soon as I popped out of the woods at like 70 yards. And he was probably gone because he was bedded right on the other side of a blowdown, steep hill, and all he had to do was take one bound and he was over the top of that knob and he was gone. So he was bedded in the perfect spot, but there were moose in there and all sorts of other, there's always moose walking around in there. So when I found that bed, I'm just going to stand here for 30 minutes. So I just stood there for 30 minutes, and that was what killed that deer. I stood there for 30 minutes, and I started to get cold because I dress really light when I'm tracking. And I followed that deer. He didn't run a 1/4 mile, and he went from a run to a walk, walked up a little teeny grade, and stood on the top of a knob. And you could see where that deer, it was almost like a bed. He'd stood there and tracked it up so much, but he just stood there and stared at his backtrack.
Yep.
And when I saw that, and I could just see his slow foot dragging, walking tracks away from that, and 10 yards further I could see where he was ferning already, digging up ferns and stuff. I'm like, this deer's dead. I'm gonna kill him, because he just thinks, oh, that was just a moose, or he had totally forgotten about me, totally blown it off, and he was just like, I'm fine, I'm in a huge chunk of woods now. I'm just gonna keep walking. I'm just gonna keep eating ferns, because he'd probably been bedded all, for 5-6 hours at the time. So he's like, I'm up. I might as well eat a little bit. And I caught up to him in not even a half mile and shot him. So if I hadn't have waited at that bed, if I'd have just kept walking, it would have been I bet you I would have never caught up to that deer that day, because he would have been standing there and he would have seen me coming right away. And where he was, all he had to do was take 4 or 5 steps and he was right over the knob again and gone. He just had it. He was covering his ass, and he was standing there and he didn't see me come along for 30 minutes. I'm sure he was there within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And he stood there for a long time. I mean, it was all tracked up where
Yep.
he was just
Nervous.
standing there pacing, looking and looking, and I didn't come along, and he's just like, all right, everything's good in the world.
Yeah,
It wasn't. But I mean, that's just stuff you learn. Like in my youth, I used to just chug right along on that track, and it was all about just covering ground while I kept jumping that buck. And they see you following them twice like that, then they're just like, all right, I'm being hunted. That thing's following me. Because you got to figure, maybe when he was a fawn or a yearling, he got followed like that by a coyote.
Yeah.
They're
tracked all year long.
Yeah, they're followed, all the time.
And they know that their feet have
absolutely
to do with it.
Yeah, they know everything else is using their nose just like them. So
They think that's what we're doing, but
yeah, they got bears after them when they're a fawn all the way up through, and they got coyotes after them all the time. They just, if they know you're following them, that makes the game that much tougher.
Yep.
So, just little tricks to pick up on, man. It's so much fun.
They're not dumb.
No, they don't get 5-6 plus years old by being dumb. And it's just trying to figure out, they're an extraordinary animal. So you got to do something different than what the average hunter's doing to kill them consistently, anyways. They make mistakes, but to consistently kill them, you got to do stuff that other people aren't.
They don't make them often, and they don't make them in a lot of areas. They're only making that mistake
Absolutely.
in a little one spot, maybe.
Yeah, killing him out of a stand is just figuring out where can I catch him making a mistake, or where is he vulnerable, And when you're tracking him, it's just a matter of
getting the shot,
just getting the shot at him and trying, A lot of times, if you can see them before they see you, you're going to kill them. But
do you spend a lot of time in the summer practicing shooting? Like, do you roll tires and all that, or
nowhere near as much as I should? No one shoots their deer rifle as much as they should. I don't think. I'd like to set something up. Maybe this summer or next. This summer is going to be so busy for me, but maybe to shoot it in the winter would be the best time to probably do it. I'd like to set up some sort of a running deer target on a zip line or something that goes down through the woods.
Yep. In and out of trees and shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like, I always thought it'd be cool to have one that's kind of like a 3D course where you have 20 targets or whatever, but you walk a loop through the woods and you get to a spot and it's just like, okay, when you get there, there's a spray paint square on the ground. When you get into that square, you've got 7 seconds to shoot the deer target. And you got to walk with your head looking down at the ground. Let's say you walk into that square, pick your head up, you got 7 seconds to shoot that deer target. It may be at 10 yards, it may be at 80. And it's going to be in a hunting scenario like a buck just stood up out of his bed. I think that would be like awesome real world practice, And then you could have some running shots figured out in there where you have somebody roll a tire down a bank, or you have a zip line where it's kind of going away from you down a bank, down a hill, because that's a lot of times you're not shooting a deer running perfectly broadside. They're running quartered away.
Away, yeah.
Or straight away in a lot of cases. So it's that's something people don't practice enough.
No.
It's hard to get enough practice in doing it, especially with ammo prices now.
Mm-hmm. And it's not, for a lot of people, it's not convenient just because you need a place to do it.
There's not a lot of good places you can go fire off a high-powered rifle 20 times and no one's going to get mad.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you add the cost of the ammo. Then you got to drive there, and time and
set it up. Yeah. but it's imperative. I mean, all through my youth, I would always go rabbit hunting in the winter with a 22, and I would have a scope on it, just like my deer rifle. So it just gets you in better, gets your hand-eye coordination for shooting stuff with a scope, you know, because a lot of people struggle with a scope trying to get something moving in it, you know. But I've always had a scope, you know, a scope 22, and just shot, you know, rabbits and squirrels.
Track them?
The rabbits, yeah. The funnest way to hunt them when you didn't have a dog. We didn't have a dog, so it'd be my buddy and I, and we'd get a fresh snow where it snowed right into the morning, and that was pretty cool. You'd walk until you jumped a rabbit, and then right about where you jumped them, usually that rabbit's going to come right back through that basic area.
Yep.
Have one person get on the track, and they just whistle or keep talking, whatever. You can run that rabbit right around in a half-mile circle, and it'll come right back.
Beagle them.
And you can shoot them, you know, and I mean, you don't get them all the time, but it's hilarious because that rabbit will run kind of a circle around, you know, and you can hear your buddy kind of looping around. All right, he's headed back your way. He's headed back, you know, or whistling, whatever, you know, or hooting like an owl, whatever you want. It doesn't matter what you do. You can walk silent, but it's just then no one will know where the hell you are. But it was a safety reason also. If you were whistling, then you knew which direction not to shoot. But that's great practice, having a snowshoe hare loping by you, not burning by like you would be with a beagle, but just loping by. Yep. And you just got to pick an opening and try to shoot him behind the shoulder or the head or whatever. It's great practice for deer hunting.
Yeah. Mike Stevens from Big Woods Bucks said he told me he's like, that's the best practice in the world.
They run just like a deer, just smaller.
Yeah, they do the same thing as pretty much deer do, just on a way smaller scale. Yeah. The season's long, so you get plenty of chances to do it. He said that's.
And you're tracking, so if you're gonna just track them and shoot them too, you're working on not having your eyes on the ground and you're up looking for what you're after. I've shot a pile that way too.
And you work, and it's good practice.
You pick one of them things out, man.
For your eyes, because
deer are easy to pick out compared to
a
white rabbit with everything covered in snow.
Yeah,
no question.
Deer look like, stand right out.
Yeah.
It was funny, that video you put. It was on Facebook or Instagram or both, but that snowshoe hare that hadn't.
I've seen a bunch of them. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of them. They're still white, man.
He was like, he was trying to fold into himself. He was trying to make himself as small as possible.
The phone was within 2 feet of him. Yeah. At one point, I could see him underneath that top, and I'm trying to get in the phone already. I'm like, he's gonna bolt out of there, and I got the phone on video, and I got it going. I'm like, oh no way, he's one of those that's gonna hold tight, and I got the phone within 2 feet of him. I could see his heart beating.
Yeah.
He was just freaking out, and he's just like, my camo's working. They know I'm here, and he took off. You know, you can see he finally just panicked. And but every other one that I've seen,
I thought you were gonna grab him.
Oh, he was close. It was pretty cool. All the others that I've seen, you know, while I'm looking for moose sheds, that's usually where I'm running into the hare. I mean, at 20 yards, they're taking off. So I don't know if they're figuring out that their camo isn't quite working or what, but they're running at 15, 20 yards. That one was the exception. He let me get real close. But in the snow, they usually will let you get real close. But they're still white, man. I'd hate to be a white rabbit running around with owls and everything they got to contend with, you know. They got tons of predators after them. Their camo needs to change over like ASAP.
Yeah. I wonder why it does. Like what?
It's the amount of hours in the day. I'm sure it's all photo.
Yep.
Photo, you know, the amount of days, the amount of light in the day.
So that would indicate, because we're starting to have less severe winters.
Yeah, we usually had snow all through March. I never shed hunted in March the past few years. It's
so that'll probably adjust.
Let's hope
in evolution.
There's not enough of them around anymore. But yeah, it's you know, you never know. People say we have a lot lighter winters, and then the next winter we're going to get pounded with snow. It goes back and forth.
But it's leaving early though.
Yeah.
You know.
This year was a very early spring.
Yeah. Well, it was bare a couple times. It'd go back to snow on the ground. But it was bare in February a couple times and
Yeah.
50s a couple days.
No, it was a good winter for the animals. They had a good mild winter.
That one day in February, it got up into the 60s or something. And then, like, the next day, I think the next day or the day after, it snowed.
Yeah.
And everybody was miserable. And I'm like, I'm looking around like, you know, it doesn't snow enough.
Yeah, you didn't fall for that.
You
didn't think it
people-
was spring in February, did you?
You people have had it easy. I mean,
March
it has
is
been
usually brutal.
an
March is
easy
usually brutal.
winter. And, like, you need more hardships because
Yeah.
you're entirely too soft.
Yeah, I'd like to have ice fished a couple more weeks, man. The lake trout fishing was
I
phenomenal.
never even stood on ice this year.
It was a good year. I wanted a little bit more ice fishing time, but it wasn't. You know, once the ice melted, I was just like, well, I might as well start shed hunting. So
Yeah, you can't grow the ice back.
no. Once it melts, it's gone. You know, it was a good year though. The few times that I got out, caught a pile of trout. But yeah, I mean, it's I always go back and forth on shed hunting in March too, because so many deer are still carrying in March. There's still
Yeah.
a lot of bucks carrying. I remember one year I hiked way up onto a mountain. It was March 12th, right around the middle of the month. Got up onto a side hill of oak, and there was still a little bit of snow on the ground, but it was all crunchy snow. And the way that the winter fell, I'm just like, all the antlers should be right on top of the snow. Like, I should go now before all of it's gone. And man, I got onto that side hill, and I could see it was covered in deer. I could see 15 deer standing there in one spot. And I'm looking with binoculars. There's an 8-pointer standing there, like middle of March. I'm like, well, I'm not going to find those sheds, so I might as well not even bump him. I just turned right around, walked right off the mountain.
Yep.
And I came back, April, and then started shed hunting. And that's when the snow disappeared that year. It wasn't until the beginning of April. So it's and why some deer carry their antlers so much longer than others. Like most of those deer this year that I found antlers from, by the camera that I left up on the mountain there, I would say they all shed in January. And some years I'll get pictures of deer in the end of March that still are carrying. It's, I've heard of people getting pictures of deer this year still carrying into March, and I don't know what.
I saw a buck on St. Patty's Day once.
Yeah.
It was like a 6-pointer or something, 2-year-old, but
I don't know what makes them carry them for so long sometimes, but
it's got to be the stress. If they didn't have a
stress and testosterone, maybe. I don't know. They still got a lot of it.
The younger ones are the ones that seem to hold them longer because they don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just getting bumped around during the rut anyway. They're not.
Yeah, those big ones.
They're not having to fight and protect their territory. They don't have any territory yet.
Yeah, those big ones that are all run down they seem to shed. Well, anywhere from like you hear of some, the very end of December, people will find some tracking or whatever. But I think the bulk of those big bucks shed January, very beginning of February at the latest. I think the bigger bucks, the 5-year-olds, and up, I think most of them are shed by February. That's fun. It's still got quite a bit of good weather to go hiking around and do some spring scouting, and there's still a lot of snow up north, so.
Is there?
Tons. I was talking to some people that were up there looking for moose sheds, and they're still knee deep or better, So.
Yeah, once that goes out, I wanna get up there and do some scouting in some areas. I was in last year and saw. Well, at the end of the day, unfortunately, I finally found a good track. But I'd already done 8 miles, and it was like 3 in the afternoon.
Yep.
I still had a 3-hour drive home.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, but it crossed the road I drove in on. I'm like, did I miss this or did this come through? Like, could I catch this buck? I'm thinking, and I'm like, I felt it, and I'm like, it's not. He didn't just come through.
Yeah.
So now I'm wondering if I drove by it. I drove by
or
slow,
you could have just missed him.
Yeah.
A couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So screw it. I'm going home. I was whooped. It was a hard 8 miles. It wasn't.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't.
No question about it.
It wasn't walking around the swamps. It was up, down.
No, you get 3 or 4 good days of tracking snow, man. That's all you want in a row.
Yeah.
You're pretty. It depending on how much you get, and how the day goes. and what time of the year it is. Like post-rut bucks don't travel as far as
Right.
those deer during the rut. I followed some of those deer around, before Thanksgiving. It seems like after Thanksgiving is like the magic time. Like from then on, I love tracking them. But
Yep.
man, before then, they can be a pain.
Yep.
You can get on some that just don't want to stop.
Yeah, and if the deer density's not not super high, which is mainly where we're tracking,
Yeah, absolutely.
they won't stop.
They got to go a long ways to find a doe. Yeah, they're not stopping until they find other deer. A lot of the times.
Yep. Well, we'll wrap this one
Oh
up.
man, yeah, time to go bust some turkeys and catch some trout. Trout season's open now, so
Yep. Yep. Opened in New Hampshire a few weeks ago. Haven't been out doing that yet either. I got to get the boat ready and have to.
we got to shoot some carp in the
Yeah, I
end
want.
of May. You got to experience that.
I wanna check that
That's
out.
pretty fun.
Yeah.
Go up to Champlain or Connecticut River or something. There's
Yep.
plenty of carp around. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, it looks it.
the spring is a fun time.
Yep.
I love it.
All right, man. Good talking to you.
Absolutely, bud.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure and come back and join us every other Monday with a brand new episode. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure and leave a review. And you can find me on YouTube at Northeast Hunt and Film. Once again, thanks for listening.